Standing in the busy streets of South London today, it is hard to imagine that much of this suburban townscape was once covered by a vast forest. Known as the Great North Wood, to distinguish it from the forests of the Weald to the south, it once stretched unbroken for almost 7 miles from Croydon to the Thames at Deptford. Its legacy can be found in many local place names: Norwood, Collier's Wood, Honour Oak and Penge, which means Wood's End. The largest surviving remnants can be found at Dulwich and Sydenham Hill Woods, which still contain much ancient woodland, mostly of sessile oak and hornbeam, and together cover some 25 hectares. Seen here from Herne Hill, 1.5 miles to the north, the woods follow the clay ridge that runs from Dawson's Heights to the Crystal Palace antenna. At almost 350 feet above sea level, it is the highest point in London between Hampstead and the North Downs. The historical boundary between Surrey and Kent until the formation of the London County Council in 1889, the ridge forms the watershed between two river systems. To the west, the Effra, which joins the Thames at Vauxhall, and to the east, the Ravensbourne, which flows into Deptford Creek. From Saxon times until the Industrial Revolution, the woods provided timber for the shipyards at Deptford, bark from which tannin was extracted for leather making, and charcoal for the city's blacksmiths and bakeries. The woods were managed using a technique known as coppicing, in which a tree is cut down to its bole, encouraging new shoots to spring up, which can be harvested as poles after 7 to 10 years. Dulwich and Sydenham woods were divided into 10 coppices, one of which was harvested each year in rotation. Several large oaks with 3 or 4 trunks growing from the same root can still be found in Dulwich Wood. These old coppices ceased to be cut more than a century ago and have been allowed to grow out. The woods also provided fodder for pigs. In a custom known as pannage, swineherds would release the animals into the forest in autumn to forage for acorns. The Domesday Book records that the Croydon demesne of Lanfranc, Archbishop of Canterbury, included wood for 200 swine. The Great North Wood is mentioned in a number of medieval charters, and parts of it appear on estate maps dating back to the 16th century, including this one of Leverhurst Manor in Norwood. Oriented with east at the top, it shows the Nor Wood bordering the estate to the south. Turning the map through roughly 90 degrees, we see that Dean Green is Tulse Hill, Legham Lane running off towards Streatham is Liam Vale, Hall Lane is part of Croxted Road, and the open ground to the south corresponds to the triangle now bounded by Knights Hill and Norwood Road. The surveyor Ralph Treswell the Younger made this map of Sydenham Common in 1607. It is drawn with south at the top. Rotated to the more familiar orientation and redrawn in a more legible style, it reveals this rough waste parcel of ground to be bounded to the west by Woodland, today's Dulwich and Sydenham woods. Coulton's Wood refers to the Coulton family who were granted the Dulwich estate by Henry VIII after he confiscated it from Bermondsey Abbey. Around the time Treswell made his map, Francis Coulton sold the estate to the actor Edward Alleyne, who had established the College of God's Gift in Dulwich there in 1619. Alleyne managed the woodlands efficiently, reserving what timber was needed for the estate's own use, while selling the rights to cut the rest to local farmers and London bakers to finance his school. The first printed map of Surrey, in which much of the wood was located, is this magnificent example of Jacobean cartography by John Speed, drawing on an earlier survey by John Norden. English and Dutch cartographers were cooperating closely at this period, and the map was engraved by Jodocus Hondius of Amsterdam. The top right-hand corner of Speed's map shows, on a small scale, woods and hills stretching north from Croydon towards Dulwich. Sydenham Hill is topped with a windmill, a landmark that would feature on maps for centuries to come. Speed's work was well known and much copied in the Low Countries. The Dutch cartographer Johan Blau's Surrey, seen here in a pirate edition by his rival Jan Jansoen, draws on the earlier map by his friend Speed. In 1695, Edmund Gibson published a new edition of the Elizabethan antiquary William Camden's Britannia, a county-by-county description of Britain, and commissioned new maps from the cartographer Robert Morden. Morden's map of Surrey shows an expanse of woodland stretching south from Knight's Hill and east from Streatham. His map of neighbouring Kent offers a different view, with the woods spreading either side of the road that runs from Croydon to London via Dulwich. The first printed map to show the woods in detail is this 1729 depiction of Surrey by the London map and globe maker John Senex. Senex uses hachures to indicate the hilly topography more accurately than his predecessors, and shows a band of woodland stretching from Knight's Hill to Penn's Common. Elaine's College is shown at the apex of the triangle formed by College Road, Gallery Road and Dulwich Common. The tree-lined avenue, running south from the Green Man, was laid out sometime before 1714 by its landlord, John Cox, to bring customers to his inn from Sydenham Wells, here named Dulwich Wells. The German mapmaker Matthias Zeuter names the North Wood, which he shows stretching south from Knight's Hill to Streatham. A further band of woodland extends east towards Sydenham. Sydenham Hill is still topped by its windmill, to the north are Dulwich College, Dulwich Wells and Lewisham. The woods are shown in even more detail on the magnificent 12-sheet chart of London and its environs, published by the French Huguenot cartographer John Roch in 1746. Surveyed between 1741 and 1745, it extends 10 miles from the city in all directions, recording fields, farms and woodland now engulfed by the metropolis. In the cities of London and Westminster, the profusion of church spires allowed Roch to use trigonometry, so his plan of these areas fits accurately on top of a modern map. Beyond this built-up area, however, tall buildings were few and far between, so he was forced to rely on rods or chains to measure distance. These can stretch with use, so inaccuracies crept in. Streatham Hill, today's A23 for example, is shown about a quarter of a mile east of its actual position. In the 1730s, Cox's grandson Francis discovered a spring in the grounds of the Green Man and established Dulwich Wells as a spa. Roch labels the walk from Sydenham Green Man Walk. Today, it is Cox's Walk. East of Dulwich and north of Sydenham, Roch shows a wooded hill named Oak of Arnon, today's Honour Oak. The name is said to derive from the story that Elizabeth I once rested under an oak here. Its successor, planted in 1905, can still be seen in One Tree Hill. Some 20 years later, Roch produced a map of Surrey at a scale of 2 inches to the mile, which shows the woods in greater detail, along with parish boundaries and land use. Surveyed around 1762, it was published after his death by his widow, Mary Ann Roch. John Carey's 15 miles round London shows the Nor Wood extending from the Green Man in the north as far as the edge of Knight's Hill to the southwest. It is crisscrossed by tracks, some of which are the origins of modern roads such as College Road. First published in 1788, this map by William Fadden, geographer to King George III, is not based on a new survey, but draws on county maps from the 1760s onwards. Extended 25 miles around the capital, it shows the full extent of the woods at the time. To the north is Oak of Arnon Wood. Immediately to the south, Westwood Common, or Sydenham Common, links it to the Norwood, which stretches unbroken to Upper Norwood, where part of White House Wood, also known as White Horse Wood, survives in Norwood's Grangewood Park with its magnificent stands of oak. Thomas Milne's land use map shows the urban expansion of London in the late 18th century. Based on the trigonometrical survey begun by the Board of Ordnance in 1791, it is the first map of the Greater London area that can be accurately superimposed onto a modern street plan. Milne shows field boundaries and indicates land use with letters and shading. Arable land is marked with the letter A and coloured yellow. Meadow is marked M and shaded light green. Paddocks and parks are marked P and coloured pink. Woodland is dark green and marked W. By now, the Industrial Revolution had made coal and iron readily available, reducing demands for charcoal and timber, so parts of the wood have been grubbed up for farmland. The 50-acre wood, which extended to the Green Man on Carey's map, has disappeared, and fields have pushed through from Dulwich to Penge, separating the northern and southern parts of the wood. The Enclosure Acts of the late 18th and early 19th centuries removed common lands from public ownership, allowing their sale to private landlords. Norwood Common, as seen on this map, was broken up. Westwood or Sydenham Common disappeared, as did Penge Common, now Crystal Palace Park. By the 1830s, the Croydon Canal ran to the east of the woods from the Grand Surrey Canal at New Cross to Croydon. One of the last canals to be built, it was made obsolete by the coming of the railways almost as soon as it was completed. By the time Benjamin Davis's map was published in 1840, the canal had been filled in to become the track bed of the London and Croydon Railway, a harbinger of the changes about to engulf the woods. Davis's map also shows Grange Lane and Low Cross Wood Walk running between Sydenham Hill and College Road, as they do today. Dewhurst's map of the parish of St Giles Camberwell shows the coppices within the woods during the last phase of the woodland economy. Lapps Wood, immediately south of Cox's Walk, Ambrook Hill, east and west Peckermans, and first Low Cross Wood. To the south, a second Low Cross Wood, and beyond College Road, east and west Vicar's Oak Wood, and hither and further King's Wood. The coppices charted by Dewhurst can be plotted onto a modern map to show their relation to the present-day streets and surviving woodland. The name Hitherwood and a fragment of the forest itself survive in a small square surrounded by housing just west of College Road. Despite the Industrial Revolution and the expansion of the metropolis, the area retained its rural character well into the 19th century. An expanse of woodland, heath, scrub, pasture and isolated farms where nightjars could still be heard at dusk. It was a lawless place, traversed by smugglers carrying contraband from the Kent and Sussex coasts to London. Samuel Matthews, a hermit who lived in Dulwich Woods, had been murdered there in 1803, and on winter nights Dr. Leese, a resident of Norwood, used to discharge a pistol to let it be known that he had firearms in the house. The pre-Raphaelite John Lucas Tupper's poem A Sketch from Nature, dated Sydenham Wood, 1849, lyrically describes sheep grazing on the lower slopes, while giant long shadows the trees are making, and velvet soft are the woodland tufts. Among the many fascinating details on this splendid circular map of the area 12 miles around St Paul's is a glimpse of the remaining woods at this period. Dulwich and Penge Commons are still open space. To the north is Oak of Arnon Wood, to the south Whitehouse Wood, and to the west of it Farnham Wood, soon to be lost to development. Then the Crystal Palace came, recalled John Ruskin. In 1854, Joseph Paxton's great glass and iron hangar, constructed in Hyde Park for the Great Exhibition of 1851, was relocated to Penge Place. It changed the area irrevocably, forever spoiling the view, Ruskin complained, bringing every show day from London a flood of pedestrians down the footpath who left it filthy with cigar ashes. Stanford's 1862 map shows the palace in its newly created park. Palace Road and Victoria Road, today's A2199, now bisect King's and Vicar's Oak Woods. Alongside Rock Hill, a straight steep path through Low Cross Wood, the Lambeth Waterworks has been built. 10 years later, the changes are even more apparent. Between Dulwich Road, today's Fountain Drive, and Victoria Road, the trees have given way to houses separating the northern and southern parts of the wood, while the southern triangle has been further dissected by Farquhar Road. To convey passengers to Paxton's new station in front of the exhibition hall, the Crystal Palace high-level railway was cut through Ambrook Hill Wood in 1865, tunnelling under Sydenham Hill to emerge beyond Wells Park Road. To carry Cox's Walk across the railway, a footbridge was constructed. Along Sydenham Hill, a row of villas has also encroached on the woodland. The first of these, Lapswood, was built by Charles Barry, architect of the new Dulwich College buildings, as his own home. Beechgrove was subsequently the home of Lionel Logue, speech therapist to King George VI. The small cedar that can be seen in the grounds of the Who survives amid Sydenham Hill woods and is now a majestic tree. The steep slope required the gardens to be elaborately terraced, and many of the footings can still be seen amid the woods. By 1895, the triangle of woodland between Crystal Palace Parade and Farquhar Road had been mostly given over to housing, with only a few fragments of Vicar's Oak Wood remaining. To the north, the portion of Ambrook Hill Wood east of the railway had been partitioned into gardens, although a band of trees has been preserved, presumably to screen the residents from passing trains. The circular pond that still exists in Dulwich Woods today appears on this map for the first time. The first half of the 20th century saw little further alteration to the outline of the remaining woods. The main changes on this 1952 Ordnance Survey map are the disappearance of the Crystal Palace in the fire of 1936 and the installation during World War II of an anti-aircraft battery near the golf course. Its crescent-shaped rampart can be seen just north of the woods. On Farquhar Road, several Victorian houses had been destroyed by enemy bombing. Others were subsequently demolished, and the site has since returned to nature and is now part of Dulwich Upperwood, a local nature reserve managed by the Trust for Urban Ecology. Passenger numbers on the railway fell after the Crystal Palace burned down. In 1953, the line was closed and the tracks were lifted soon afterwards. The cutting through Sydenham Hill Woods then reverted to nature. During the 1950s and 60s, the Dulwich estate constructed new housing developments in and around the woods at Farquhar Road, Peckerman's Wood and Great Brownings. Then, in the 1970s and 80s, as the Victorian villas on Sydenham Hill fell into disrepair and were demolished, Southwark Council proposed to build on the site, and a fierce planning battle ensued. The outcome was that in 1985 the council handed the management of Sydenham Hill Wood to the London Wildlife Trust. Today, this much-loved urban wood supports a rich variety of bird life, including great spotted and green woodpeckers, nuthatch and raptors such as sparrowhawks and kestrels. In spring, the woods sparkle with wild garlic, bluebell and sweet woodruff. Summer brings a dazzling array of butterflies, while other invertebrates include spectacular dragonflies and the magnificent stag beetle, while autumn nurtures a rich and varied growth of fungi. Superimposing the former extent of the Great North Wood onto a modern map, we see how much of what is now suburbia was still covered by trees in the late 18th century. Several remnants survive today, from One Tree Hill in Honour Oak to Grangewood Park in Norwood, the largest being Dulwich and Sydenham Hill Woods. In June 2017, the London Wildlife Trust was awarded a grant from the Heritage Lottery Fund to launch the Great North Wood project, to raise awareness of this relatively little-known woodland and work with volunteers, community groups, landowners and local councils to conserve, revive and enhance the remaining fragments of this historic landscape for generations of Londoners to come.